I used to be a dentist.
Okay.
The running joke is that if you are South Asian, your career options are lawyer, doctor, engineer. And my family grew up, we're blue collar. My dad owned his own auto repair shop. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And we were one of the very few Indian families in this small town in Texas. But all the other people that we knew that were part of the community were physicians. And I would see them toil away and be married more to their pagers than their spouses, honestly, because that's just how it was, right? And I thought, I don't want to do that quite. And there were messages of, like, what does it mean to be a good wife? And then, you have to, like, becoming a mother. Yes, I wanted to be a mom, but it was very much an unspoken rule of, like, you will grow up, get married, and have children.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these things, and you're like, okay, how do I do all of that? Well, I know I'll rebel and go to dental school. So I'm technically a doctor. And it was really, truly partly an ego thing for me. The title meant that I had made something of myself.
Yeah, I could see how that would be, like, also kind of important for your parents, too.
Yeah. It was their metric of, did we sacrifice everything and travel halfway across the globe?
Right, start over
before the days of FaceTime. And, now you can get Indian food and clothes, and, like, you don't ever have to leave the city to do that. You can order from anywhere and get all that. But
yeah, not the case originally.
Back in the day, no. And so for them, that title was really, really, really important. The issue becomes when we live and lead from that ego. It's very insecure and very fragile. And so that takes a toll on a person. I would almost describe it like if there's I'm not a huge, like, Harry Potter fan.
I am, so go for it.
Like, I do enjoy the movies, and so
I've read all the books. Well, all the original books.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just such a beautiful story for many reasons, but kind of like when you would allow a Death Eater to feast on your soul. Like, that's kind of what that felt like, but it was just a slow drip of just life being sucked from me.
Okay. So you had a slow dribble of just dread.
Yeah.
Basically, like, as you come out, the dread goes in, is basically kind of how they describe it.
I tried everything. I mean, it's like I didn't have any hobbies or anything, because it's like from an early age, you're like, I know I got to get good grades, and I know I need to go to school, and I need to check off all of these boxes. And
it takes a lot of time and effort to become a dentist.
Yes, it does. And resources. And so you go and you do all these things. And, I skipped 1 year of college so I could get to dental school faster. I mean, that's how intent I was on checking that box. And so when you're there and you're like, okay, I made it. And then you think to yourself, well, it should be getting better right about now. Not getting better. Oh, I know. It's the office that I'm working at. That's the problem. Oh, I know. It's the office manager. She doesn't really get me. She's not listening. She's not scheduling things properly. Oh, no, it's not her. It's the patients. Oh, I know. It's the fact that we don't take whatever insurance, or it's insert reason as to why I'm not happy. And all of them are outside of me. They're all outside factors. Never once did I consider that maybe it was something closer to home that needed some looking at and some love and care.
What was it that made you start looking inward?
I had postpartum depression with the first kid, and that was a whole other just abyss. And I remember, without going too far down the rabbit hole, I remember struggling with that and wrestling with that, because mental health is a huge taboo topic for many cultures.
Yeah, still mixed bag in the U.S.
It is a mixed bag. And importantly, it's not like you can just know what to do when you're struggling with it yourself either.
Well, also, you're not super motivated to go do something about it when you're down in the dumps. So it's kind of hard to, like, even if you recognize it, you're kind of like, I don't feel like it right now.
Yeah, maybe tomorrow.
Right.
I just remember a moment where it felt like I was at the end of my rope, and it almost felt like a little bit of a whisper from the future. Like, keep going. You keep going. Just one breath, just one more breath. it's about to get so good. You don't even know how good it's about to get. Just keep going. And I think kind of going back to agency of self, agency of choice, we all have that opportunity. And it just depends on how far are you willing to allow life to push you before you wake up and say, no, actually, I'm going to get back on the horse and I'm going to figure this out. And I say that maybe from a point of privilege, but because I recognize that there's all at the end of the day, there is Maslow's hierarchy in play.
Sure. So you actually have the ability to think about it.
So I have the ability to think about it. So I want to be very clear that I'm aware of that.
So just in case people don't know Maslow's hierarchy, it's like a pyramid, and the things at the bottom, it's different stages. You can look it up online.
Yeah.
But like at the very bottom, it's like your most basic needs. And so like that's like shelter and food.
Yeah.
And then as you go up, it gets to be more social and be more about status and then more about self-actualization. And so like a good example in society that has been up for debate is the free lunches at school. And when I say free lunches at school, I mean just like feed these kids.
Yeah.
Like the argument for it is based on Maslow. Like it doesn't matter if they are poor or not, just feed them, because if they're not fed, how do they get out of the bottom rung?
Absolutely.
To actually be able to get into growth.
Right. It's a little bit more intuitive. I mean, we slap a name on it and then we tell ourselves it's fancy, but it's really not. Like you just need your basic needs met before you can move on to something else.
Because like your all your resources are going to go to survival.
Right.
And until all your resources, like some of your resources can come out of survival, you can't do anything to develop.
Right. So there's survival, really, and then there's what we think we need to survive. And that's kind of where the ego comes in again is, there's a lot of people out there who do have their basic needs met, but now I'm going to use Jeff's term of positive adaptation. They've become used to this certain lifestyle, and now they believe that their floor is 2 or 3 or 4 or 15 steps ahead of where they started. And they can't, like, they've sold themselves the idea of this is how life has to be, and it's not going to change, or it can't change, or it shouldn't change, or who am I to change it?
Or you just don't want it to change because you know how much harder it is at a different level.
Any number of things. And so that's kind of what happened for me, kind of bringing it back, because that was what your question was, so I'm this dentist, and I'm supposed to have what I think, I was told you work hard, and then that success would make you feel happy, fulfilled, worthy of love, and all the other things, self-acceptance, acceptance of society. And I felt none of those things. I felt love within my marriage, but not like am I going to be good enough for my parents? Am I going to be good enough for everybody else? Like all of those things are sort of subconsciously rattling around. And meanwhile, your soul is getting sucked out of you. And eventually I decided to leave dentistry because, first of all, it's a violation of trust in my mind. When a patient comes to you, if my heart isn't in it, I don't believe that telling them that I will care for them, I'm not going to do them harm, but am I really truly showing up as someone I would want for me as if I was a patient? No. So there was a lot of things happening there. This lack of integrity that I felt, but then there's also no clarity on what I could do, should do. Again, who walks away from years of schooling? And
that's why we started this. That's why we kind of chose this topic is like, there's this concept called sunk cost. And basically when you put a lot of time, effort, money into something, it impacts your future decisions where we oftentimes don't make logical choices. So the fallacy, if you fall under it, and, I think most people do at times, not all the time, but there are times when they do. The problem with it is that like, you'll know that you're miserable. You'll know it's not a good fit. And yet you'll look at the past investment and be like, well, I have to stay.
right.
And what makes you surprising, and the reason why like I chose this for our topic, is like you were able to especially when there's status involved, because like it's very public then. Like there's going to be a light on you not being a dentist, whether it's from your spouse or your parents or his parents or like your friend group. Like people are going to be like, what are you doing? And they're going to be like, what are you doing? And it kind of almost locks you into it because your ego is involved and because you're like, well, I can't just give up all this past investment.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was interested in this topic. And so you pick up with sort of how you did that. Like, how did you come to the decision to do that?
Yeah. When I left dentistry, I had no clue what I wanted to do next. And I call these people, the people in my life, to your point, they were saying things like, you're making a big mistake. You don't know what you're putting at risk.
And by the way, they're saying that because they're afraid for you.
They're afraid for me. I also, I have a signature keynote talk, the Joy First Method.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
You are familiar. You're instrumental in helping me reconstruct a little piece of this.
Happy to help.
But in my talk, I talk about the logic lovers. So these are the people, right? These are the people that are saying things like, you're making a mistake. You don't know what you're putting at risk. Because of that sunk cost, right? We fall to that logic, and we are afraid not only for the person that we think is making that mistake, but it's also because we haven't, as the logic lover, not the person who is considering making this huge life change, maybe not considered how we ourselves are not living to our full potential. It's easier to keep with the status quo than to do something that seems illogical, but really, truly aligned and meaningful.
Yeah, there's that. And I can definitely see that impacting it. I think there's also just an inability for people external to you to see that it's not actually necessarily an illogical choice.
Right.
Because the cost is so personally great, knowing that you're showing up and not happy.
Exactly. They don't know what you are putting at risk by showing up in a way that's not aligned. And I think, and I will broaden this to beyond just for me showing up as a dentist, or then how that translated to me being a really angry mother, and I had guilt all the time, and so it was impacting.
You weren't the person you wanted to be.
I wasn't the person as a mom, as a wife. Then that would impact our marriage and how we made decisions, and then even things like where we went on vacation, here comes money, which is just another word for power. Where if I'm going to stop working, then I'm not going. Do I have enough of a say in where we go on vacation? Right. It's a very toxic and poisonous way to live life. When you
have to prove your value in order to have a voice.
Absolutely. This is not how we need to live. And especially as women, there's a cultural element too, with just race and gender. But beyond that, this is a call to look at how you are living life and how it impacts globally. Because we make these choices that seem individualistic, right? We're unhappy, and so I'm going to just go online shopping, or I'm going to binge watch Netflix, or I'm going to call this staff meeting and make everybody brainstorm with me something that only I see as a problem. And here we are now soul-sucking everybody else. I mean, the carbon emissions that we're putting out, just retail therapy alone, I don't have the numbers, but this is costing. Stress, that temporary dis-ease chronically is disease. So now we have huge rates of hypertension and all sorts of autoimmune disorders and even cancers that are just caused by stress and stress alone. And then that increases the burden on our healthcare system. And then, there's all this medical waste that happens when we're admitted to the hospital and we're running tests and the gloves and the tubes and the syringes. And so all of these seemingly micro decisions about how we allow stress and how we allow identity and ego and sunk cost to play into our lives does make a global impact. And so now here we are in a world that seems very uncertain and always has been uncertain, but I think with social media and things, it's just more in our face. And it seems like now more than ever, we really need to return to honoring who we are and what we deserve to be rather than leading from a place of ego, which is what I was absolutely doing when I was wielding that doctor title.
Yeah, I think what is interesting about your story is, I mean, there are a lot of things that are interesting about it, but what stands out to me is the sunk cost was up against basically, I don't know who I like am on certain dimensions, but I know who I am from like a personality mood standpoint.
Mm.
And so I don't know what I'm going to be when I'm not a dentist, but I know that right now I'm not the mother I know in my head I should be.
Right.
And I know I'm not the partner I know I probably once was and could be.
Right.
And so if you just look at it from, and generally speaking, I would encourage somebody to know what their next step is, because that's just a whole lot easier.
Sure.
And, you know, like you are privileged in the fact that like basically your husband, you know, was able to support you while you made this transition which wasn't smooth. It wasn't an efficient transition.
It wasn't efficient. It felt messy. It felt sticky. And I think it really, honestly, my ego still gets a little bit ratchety when people say, well, the only reason you were able to do any of this is because you had the support. Like it's, oh, that's why.
No, you probably would have gotten there anyway,
Yeah.
but you might have made the decision. It might have been harder to extricate yourself.
Right.
And there might have been more pain.
Right. And to your point, there's always the choice to sit there and do nothing and just status quo.
Sure. I mean, we literally see people who do that. Like I've literally talked to dentists, and not all of them, but like there have been a couple who I've been like, why are we still doing this? Because you're not happy.
Yeah.
And they have a plan and they're executing on the plan, but that plan means 10 years of really not being happy with what they're doing.
Right. And there's a sunk cost with that's
Yeah.
far greater than they're recognizing. Of course, I don't know these people's situations, but generally speaking, we only think about past like sunk cost in terms of what the sum of our decisions that we've made up until this point. We're not looking at the cost of status quo and having that be.
Yeah. And that's what they say. Like the research says with people who are able to override sunk cost is that like you stop looking at the past and you start looking at the future. And like that is not the future that this past, not the future I want. But then it's that identity issue where like, this is where I'm standing today. This is where I think I'd like to be in the future.
Right.
What's that thread that's going to take me there?
Yeah. And I think clarity forward, it's, to your point, it's always nice to know kind of, well, I've always loved to paint. Maybe I'm going to start a painting something, you know, or, but sometimes clarity comes from action.
Yeah. You start figuring, it's the experiment. You start taking action, you start getting feedback.
Right.
And then it informs whether or not you're going left, right, straight.
Right. And I remember specifically a moment where Jeff pulled me aside after, you know, something that we had worked on together. And he said, you need to continue to use your voice because it's a gift. And at the time, I was just like, I don't know, 2 years out of seeing patients. And I thought, that's great. I don't know what that means. But, you know, those moments where your support system feeds you insight, those are ones to remember because they usually will inform or validate what you already know to be true in terms of when I decided to, you know, we're not recording anymore, but when we had our podcast, you know, that was kind of leaning into that, use your voice more. And then now with the speaking, like that, use your voice more.
It's also visibility.
Yeah.
And I mean, I assume that when you gave up being a dentist and didn't know the next step, and because like society basically does do a lot of valuing of people based on what they do, and then you add in woman, married, kids, where like so much of your identity is actually contingent upon, oh, this is so-and-so's spouse, and oh, this is so-and-so's mom. And it's like, no, I am so-and-so.
Right.
And so like there's that whole level of visibility that basically you also lost.
Right.
When you walked away from being a dentist.
Yeah. And it's just such a gift to be able to really slow down and make those decisions. And, gosh, there was one point where I was trying to sell essential oils. Mm-hmm. I didn't know. I was like, I don't know what.
Yeah, you're just trying.
You're just trying things, and you're trying to honor this part of you that's like, well, I'm still a healer. I'm still someone who wants to help people. So, you have to be willing to make a fool of yourself, essentially. Like I have cringeworthy memories of me trying to like sell essential oils to my friends. But the path doesn't get cleared unless you're willing to make those. You
gotta take a machete and knock some things down.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a friend who was a Starbucks executive, and when she left Starbucks to start her own company, the founder of Starbucks said to her, you have to be willing to fail. When I started Starbucks, I, got rejected like 265 times or something ridiculous. And her response was, I'm going to go home and I'm going to make a spreadsheet, and I'm basically going to compete with Schultz on how many failures I can get.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And so her whole keynote is about our capacity to fail and like really making failure a metric for success.
There's and I don't remember his name. I always have to look it up, but there's a great TED Talk. This guy decided that he was gonna spend 100 days getting rejected. And so he would just continually ask for crazy things.
Yeah.
And like some of it would pan out, but also like some of it, like he would just like learn these lessons about rejection.
Gosh.
Like one of them, he asked if he could be, I don't know, like a greeter at a bar or something like that, instead of like a Walmart greeter, right? He asked if he could just be like a store greeter. And the person, it was a bar, I think. And the person was like, weirdo, like, and he's like, is that weird? Like he says, is that weird to want to be a greeter for a day? Like he just wanted to volunteer to be a greeter. And so like the guy's like, yeah, it's weird. And then they laughed, and then like he let him be a greeter.
Oh, okay. I was like, so did he say no? Okay. Interesting.
But it was like, in that moment of seeing that person was like, okay, weirdo, get away. He like just naturally figured out, like, he's like, oh, is that weird? And then as soon as he said that, and then we're of the same mind, then they were connected back again and laughing, and then like the door opened.
Right. Yeah, I would imagine, because it's like, does this guy know it's weird? Is it weird? Am I weird for thinking it's weird? Like there's this whole dialogue that we all have.
But I love that. Like I love like the rejection. I love the failure.
Yeah.
Like I think those are like kind of neat, interesting concepts.
Yeah. And I think importantly, it's not only that are we willing to fail and not take it personally, but are we willing to, one of my favorite things to say, especially to the kids, and they sometimes hate it, is it's not what we're doing, it's how we're doing it. Are we doing it with an intention and an energy of, let's just see, or I don't want to do this. This is going to be really awful. And everyone's going to laugh at me. Like if that's what's driving your decision, your action, that will be in the water essentially.
Yeah. So it's the difference. It's actually a negotiation concept. So it's the difference between, are you focusing as your reference point, the worst case scenario, in which case that's probably what you're going to get is very close to the worst case scenario because it's the reference point in your head. Or are you thinking about the positive possibilities?
Right.
And if you have a reference point that's like further out and positive, whether it's like, how much you're going to sell something for, not that you could be crazy, you have to be base, but
sure.
But you'll get some feedback. But if you think about the positive outcome and that's your reference point, you're more likely to land close to that.
Yeah. I like one of the analogies I like to use is it's like cooking. I mean, if you want a quality meal, you have to use quality ingredients. You can't expect this gourmet meal if you're using ingredients that are subpar. So that's an important facet of a decision to evaluate where you are and decide, is this where I want to stay, or do I want to move away from this? How do I want to move away from it? Where do I want to move to? What does that look like? And those are questions that you're consistently recycling and evaluating and reevaluating and reevaluating.
And I do think that for other people who, because we go back to Maslow, right? Like, in order for you to take and make some of the failures, you have to have your basics.
Yes.
And so it's not that you have to reach a certain point to have options. It's just that you have to do it a little differently. And so if you're at the point where, you can't just give up the career,
right,
then you're starting to do the experiments on the side with the career.
What I'm hearing you say is it's not an all or nothing game.
Right.
You can take 20 minutes of your day and do something. Like Robin Arzon, she's at Peloton. She was an attorney and she was miserable. And so I remember hearing her say something like, every day at my law firm, I would set a timer and allocate whatever time it was, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever, to look for jobs in the fitness industry. And I would just send out an email every day. I would just do something with that 15 minutes that was in service of the life I wanted to live. And eventually, certainty bends reality is quantum law. And so when you act in accordance with what you want to create, those puzzle pieces start to fall into place. Your intuition starts to turn. And from a neuroscientific standpoint, it's more like your reticular activating system, that part of your brain that's responsible for seeing patterns and detecting,
Oh, yeah. You start to see the thing.
You start to see the thing.
That you've decided to put a little focus on.
Exactly.
It's like somebody buys a car color that you've never seen before, and then all of a sudden, everywhere you go, it's right see there. It.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of where that transition lies. I'm always fascinated at these people who have done incredibly well in their fields. It's always so much more foundational. Roger Federer is another one that I admire. He came from wealth and things like that. And he talks about how, at the end of the day, it was just about having fun on the tennis court. It was never about being the greatest player of all time. It was never about having all of these deals with Rolex and this and that and the other. He's like, I was just a kid who wanted to have fun. And when you are allowing yourself to attune to what feels good, because that's the other thing about the logic lovers. The decisions that you're making when you're attuned with who you are, they're logical to you. They make sense to you. And it feels like suffocation if you don't make that leap of faith.
Yeah.
But to the rest of the world, it's like you're being really reckless and stupid and rash.
It's funny because tennis, right? I think of Andrew Augustine, who's the opposite, right? Like, never wanted to play tennis, got forced into it by his father, has a great book. And so, like, he's notoriously, like, one of the angriest, craziest tennis players. But, like, that's you as the dentist, right? Like, think about that poor man out there, famous for tennis, never wanted to play it, at least not professionally.
Yeah.
And has to keep showing up. And no wonder the anger was leaking out.
Yeah. So
I just came into my head because you were using the opposite, with like somebody who like looks at it and is like, this is play.
Yeah. It's because again, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. It's the ingredients that you bring into the room behind a decision that will invariably play out. And I think that touches on something else too, which is it's not that ego and fear-based thinking won't get you somewhere. It can absolutely get you from point A to point B. If you look, even
if you're willing to suck it down, but
absolutely
probably not going to be the best version of yourself in other ways. Like, you might be the best tennis player in the world,
right,
but you are this notoriously angry human being.
Right. Who's importantly spreading that toxicity,
everywhere.
It's like a jerk to the person at the grocery store and, cutting people off in traffic. And, is that really, again, globally, there is a cost that we all pay when each of us decides to not be the best version of ourselves, whether we're conscious of what that is or not. And the science, as you well know, shows that when we're not in that state of stress, when we're not in that ego, we actually perform better. with a lot less effort.
Yeah, it's funny because there's that fallacy that, a certain level of stress brings out the better side of us. But actually, that was like one piece of research that hasn't been replicated. Actually, it's when you're comfortable and you're in the zone and you're like, as soon as you get stressed, you're thinking about things in a way instead of just like, I think the analogy that most of us can identify with is driving. When you first start driving, you're stressed and you're thinking about every little thing, and then you're not really a very good driver. But once you learn how to drive, like, you actually aren't thinking about it. You're not stressed by it. You're not thinking about it. And like, like we live in crazy cities, and we're weaving in and out, and people are doing crazy things, and we're reacting. And, sometimes we might get mad at somebody because we feel like it was intentional. But like, for the most part, you're just trying to skate through the cars and get to your location as fast as possible. And you're not like, again, this is assuming you're not stressed by traffic, but you're, like, this is not something that you're thinking about. It's not something you're really stressed about. And you can be a very good driver that way. Whereas the person who is stressed by it or stressed by traffic, they're not able to flow and adapt the same way.
Right. They're not able to see, oh, there's a car up there. I need to avoid that.
Right. Because they're so busy paying attention to what's back here.
Right. And part of it is, I know I've heard you and Jeff talk about how, when we're stressed, part of what determines our level of stress is experience and education. So to your point, the more experienced you are at driving, Houston traffic is not going to freak you out the way it would if you were maybe a brand new 15-year-old driver who typically lives out in the suburbs. And, like, it's just, but what kind of experience you have as a driver, be it actually in the car or a driver in your own life, that's really a lot. There's a lot of choice there.
Yeah. I'm going to give you closing words. Anything else that you want people to think about as they're thinking about maybe their own life and making some change? Like, if anybody's out there sitting there going, I know how I made this decision, but I didn't really make this decision for me, or I made this decision before I really knew what it was going to be like to be in this position.
Yeah.
And however they get there, they recognize, I'm not happy.
Yeah. You are not going to miss the opportunities that are meant for you, especially if you slow down and practice that self-compassion and not get lost in the story of I should have known better, or, my parents
don't get lost in this
or that, or my teacher, I had this awful professor. Like, no, none of that. Of course, those feelings are valid, but just practice some compassion with that. And then I think the other thing to really think about is, people think that I left dentistry and I just quit one day, and that's not true. I mean, it took time. It wasn't a light switch. And it took, maybe I'll go down to 4 days a week. Okay, that's not working. Maybe I'll go down to 3 days a week. Maybe I'll go down to 2 days a week. And so just, I think this question, anytime, regardless of whether we're looking to make a change or not make a change, but anytime we're up against a challenge, if we can just remember to breathe a few times, literally just sit there and connect with our breath and say, how would a person at peace handle this? I think there's a lot of insight and wisdom that will come forth the more we ask that question of ourselves. And that, at least in my experience, has been a really strong point of guidance.